All right, here we go. Another episode coming your way. This is kind of a 2-for-1 episode. We're going to talk a little spring football and then get more into the men's basketball side of things with Ben McCollum and the new era for men's basketball. So this is Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin, joined today with Tyler once again, and let's roll. So Tyler, we're about 2 weeks now into this new era for men's basketball, and who would have thought we would be talking so much men's basketball, but that's just the way it goes. If Beth would have said, you know what, we're going to stay with Fran one more year, then there's really not much to talk about, right? It's just another season with Fran. We kind of know what's coming, but there's obviously way more to talk about, way more excitement now with Ben. What are your thoughts on everything going on these last 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, the last couple weeks, I haven't had a chance to be on this podcast. You've kind of done your own thing the last couple episodes. I was on vacation. I haven't had the opportunity to kind of give my overall thoughts on it. But first of all, I think it was a home run hire based on what I've seen and what I've heard. You talk about the opening press conference. I think that's really what sold me. He killed that press conference. He hit on everything that was wrong with the Iowa basketball program, the state of where it was at, everything that had kind of gone on under Fran. And you talk about fan engagement, getting fans to actually show up to games. He talked about wanting to play defense, right? He talked about getting guys that are selfless guys that want to play for one another, that want to play defense, that want to win, that aren't about individual stuff. Like that stuff comes with winning, right? Like he talked about everything that I think us Iowa fans have just wanted for a while, and we knew we weren't going to get that kind of under Fran because it just felt like, and again, this isn't me, weeks later trying to pile on the fact that Fran's gone, but you just knew what you were going to get with him. You were going to get a great offense, you were going to get zero defense, and you knew that you were potentially going to get a first round exit, whether that was the Big Ten tournament or, NCAA tournament. And that was his ceiling. Maybe the second round, right? Never got to a Sweet 16 in 15 years there. And I think what came down to it was fans stopped showing up. We stopped supporting. And Beth, give her a lot of credit. It was a swift and kind of fast process, but she moved on right away. So I know maybe I'm rambling a little bit, but basically just you get a guy that's a winner. You get a guy that's a smart guy. You get a guy that other coaches look to for advice and look up to for scheme and for basketball knowledge. And I feel like having that along with the fact now that we have committed and promised more NIL to him. And I love it. I'm excited. I'm re-engaged. I think I'm going to go to more games come next year. I'm sure a lot more fans will too. And so home run hire.
Yeah, let's take a look at the kind of the roster makeup so far because, still got a long ways to go here. But we learned yesterday, we're recording this on Saturday, that the two guys that we were maybe hoping to get was Price Sanford and Josh Dix back. We retained those two guys. There was three guys in particular that Ben really talked about at his presser. It's Cooper Koch, Price Sanford, and Josh Dix. We hit on one, and I'm glad Cooper Koch is back. We'll talk probably a little more about him here shortly. But yeah, losing Price and Dix, for me, I obviously would love for them to come back. But in all honesty, if they're not completely bought in, then maybe it's best to go somewhere different and both parties kind of go their separate ways. Yes, it would have been nice to keep a few, and we did keep Koch, but it would have been nice to keep Dix. Can you imagine the backcourt of Dix and Bennett? But at the same time, what did we achieve with them? We didn't make the tournament this year. We didn't have a very good year. So maybe it's best if both parties, like I said, kind of go their separate ways and move a different direction, especially if what the rumors are of how much Josh Dix was going to be getting. In my opinion, you could use that money for a couple players that are solid versus just one. And then Price, what I heard, what he was getting, I feel like there's other guys out there that you can pay that are just as good as him. Right. So I'm not too mad about it. It would have been nice to keep at least one of those guys. Right. But I think it is what it is.
I think maybe Iowa, and Ben sat down with them. It was reported that they had good conversations, good meetings. And I think he tried to make one last ditch effort to see where their heads were at and to get them to stay. But obviously, and you don't fault a guy like Josh. He's from Council Bluffs, right? He's a guy that worked his ass off. Obviously, he played really well and earned himself that amount of money. And you never. And same with Price. I mean, if he's going to get that money from Nebraska, I mean, it's Nebraska. I hate to see him go to the rival.
Yeah.
But it's hard to fault those guys. I mean, these guys might not make it to the NBA. They're trying to get their money now. So it's the world we live in. This is the new
exactly
NIL world. It's crazy.
Yeah, let's take a look at the roster as of now. Now, when you guys listen to this next Monday, Tuesday, things can change, obviously. You know, we could add another player between now and when you guys are listening. But as of right now, it's pretty much the Drake Bulldogs and then Cooper Koch. That's kind of our team right now. And I'm not saying that like in a bad way. You know, there's a lot of Iowa fans that are annoyed that, you know, we're getting all these Drake guys, and people have to realize that we're not done. Like, we're going to get other players. We're getting the guys that Ben wants to bring along. And I'm totally on board with all these guys. You know, they're not going to all be starters for us. You know, a lot of these guys are going to be coming off the bench. They are bought into Ben's system. And the reason why I can say that confidently is because they wouldn't be going to Iowa if they weren't fully bought into Ben's system. They would be going somewhere else, or they'd be staying at Drake. So they're fully bought into him. They've been in the system now for a year where they know what Ben's system is like. I like it. I like all these guys. I mean, obviously it starts with Bennett Sturts, 5-star transfer. You know, some sites have him as the number 1 rated portal player. Some have him like in the top 5. Great start right there getting him. We got obviously Cooper Koch back. You saw in the beginning of the year, like November and part of December, this guy's going to be pretty good for us. And it makes you wonder if he would have stayed healthy all year, especially with all the injuries that we had, if he was potentially going to be a starter at some point this last year for us. Unfortunately got injured, and but I'm really excited for him. You know, he's a really good young prospect. He can shoot the ball pretty good. He needs to probably add a few, pounds to his frame a little bit. And Ben kind of talked about that. Be a better defender, things like that. But he has a lot of potential, and I'm really pumped for him. And then we got, the 4 other Drake guys. Cam, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Manyao. He's their center, 6'8". We got Tavion Banks last night, 6'7". He can kind of play a bunch of different positions. He's more of a, in my opinion, kind of like a forward type player. Yep. Isaiah Howard, he was a young freshman for them last year, has a lot of potential. He is more of a forward. And then we got Cale Combs, who's more of a guard for Drake. And so you look at the team so far, it's a good starting point. Kind of my wish list, if I could have it my way, I would say I would love for Bennett and then another combo guard, whether it's kind of a point guard, shooting guard, where Bennett, more times than not can maybe go up the court with the ball, but then maybe other times kind of play off the ball. So get another combo type guard. And then I wouldn't mind Cooper Koch starting like at the 3 and then getting a stretch 4 and then getting a center down low. And then at that point, then all the Drake guys that we just got that everybody's complaining about that we're getting, it's like, well, these guys are going to be coming off the bench for us. The guys that beat Missouri, right? They might not be quite good enough to start in the Big Ten, but they're going to be coming off the bench for us, those 4 guys. And then at that point, you have a 9-man rotation there. So that's a really good, if we can do that, if we can get another good combo guard, get a stretch 4 and get a center, and then have these guys kind of come off the bench with Bennett Sturts and Cooper Koch.
Yeah,
I think that can be a first good year for Ben.
Yeah, and the people that are complaining, I mean, you got to realize this. I mean, I know, again, Drake was a mid-major that played in the Missouri Valley, but you have Bennett Sturts, Player of the Year in the Valley. You have Tavion Banks, 6th Man of the Year in the Valley. Like, these guys, at least 2 of them right there were tops in the Valley and the awards that they won last year. So they're talented guys, and obviously Bennett. I mean, if nobody watched him play in the Valley last year, all you had to do was watch him in the tournament, right? He was a stud, man. But I agree with you. I think we need another guard to sort of maybe take some of the pressure off of Bennett and make it so that he doesn't feel like he has to do everything right for this team. I really love that. I would love to obviously add, a dominant presence down in the post area, where I feel like that's kind of Iowa's need every year in basketball. But
and that's the thing. Like, I love Cam, but I just don't know if he's capable. I mean, he's only 6'8", he's a little undersized. Yeah. Game in and game out in the grind of the Big Ten. If he can be the starter for us, right? I think you need to go out and you need to find somebody that's 6'11", 6'10", 7 foot, maybe not good offensively. You know, don't really need him to be that good offensively, but you just need a guy that can rebound, that can defend down low, especially when you get in the bulk of the Big Ten where that is like much needed.
Yep. And the other part of that, I loved what you said, is these guys, I mean, a lot, like look at Bennett. I mean, this guy has been with Ben McCollum since Missouri, the Northwest Missouri State days, right?
Yeah.
These guys have been in his system. It's not like these guys just necessarily chose to come to Iowa. Ben wanted these guys to come to Iowa, right?
Exactly.
They wouldn't be on this team if that wasn't the case. And from Ben's track record, I think we can all trust in his judgment, right? So you're exactly right. There's gonna be more guys coming down the pipeline here shortly. It's just the beginning of this transfer portal window, and I'm excited to see what else we land.
Here's another thing too, that, you know, a lot of these guys, Tavion Banks, right, Bennett Sturts, especially Bennett Sturts, these guys could go anywhere in the country, right? I mean, or maybe not so much Tavion Banks, but there would be other programs out there that are wanting them potentially, and they all chose to follow Ben. So what does that tell you? That they like playing for Ben, right? So that's a good sign there. And I agree with people when they, you know, say, oh, you know, with the Drake guys. Yeah, I agree that if these were like our starting five, if this was kind of our team, and then we just got some other just transfers that, you know, weren't going to play very much,
I'd be worried too.
I'd be a little worried too, because you get in the grind of the Big Ten, it's a little bit different than the grind of the Missouri Valley, right? But I still think that a majority of these players will be coming off the bench for us. You might see 2 Drake starters, whether it's like Tavion Banks and Bennett, or Bennett and Cam, but I think majority will be coming off the bench. So it's going to be a critical next month to get some guys. I really want Collin Evans from Colorado State. He's like my number one priority. He's a point guard, can play, kind of a combo guard, shot 44% from the 3. That's somebody that I would love. Has tournament experience, right? They played Maryland in the round of 32, almost should have maybe beat them, right, to go to Sweet 16. So he's the type of guy, like, match him with Bennett Sturts. That's pretty good. So yeah, we'll just have to kind of just see how things shake out the next couple weeks. I encourage people to stay patient, stay calm, right? We're going to miss on some guys. There's going to be guys there where we want and we miss out. But the good news is there's like 1,400 transfer players in the portal. So you're bound to get a few. Let's just say that. You're bound to get a few, especially if your NIL is decent, like they've been talking, you know, they upped it up. And from what I heard, these Drake guys aren't going to cost very much bringing in. So we still have a decent amount to play with. And so the goal is to, like I said, find a few more players that can start for us, and then have the Drake guys come off the bench. So, but other than that, we could switch to football. It's just crazy to me because the last month I've just been so consumed with the basketball news, you know, with Fran getting fired, with Ben getting hired. I kind of forgot about football. And spring practice started a week and a half ago, and I kept saying on this podcast, I'm going to do a podcast going over spring football, and I just never got around to it because every podcast was centered around basketball. But here we are. We're already almost 2 weeks into spring football, and we're almost, you know, especially when this episode comes out and you get into this next week, we're like really close to the open scrimmage on April 26th. And so it's kind of going by fast here. What I want to do is I want to go through kind of my big storylines of things that I'm kind of looking for or kind of watching or keying in on during the spring. As long as the weather stays nice, Tyler and I are actually going to be going to the open scrimmage in Iowa City, which I'm excited about. I haven't been to one of those for a long time. Obviously, you know, it's nothing special, but it's still kind of nice to get to Kinnick. You can kind of see the team in action.
It's more of a practice than an actual game,
a lot of guys sit out, so it's not, you can't really take much away from it, but it's still kind of nice to just go. So we're going to go to that, and we will have an episode after all that and kind of share our thoughts. But let's get into my storylines here. And then at the end, any other just kind of related news. You know, obviously we've had some transfers the last couple of weeks. We'll get into that as well. So let's start with the offense. And I have 4 storylines for both the offense and the defense. First one is the quarterback room progression. You know, it's amazing what a year can do. You go back to last year at this time, our quarterback room, I don't think we realized how truly awful it was. You had Marco Linus, who is now at Elon. You had a half-crippled Cade McNamara, who is now at East Tennessee State. And you had Deegan Hill at Utah Tech. So you got those guys, and they're all gone now. And now you're bringing in a year later, 365 days later, you have 6 quarterbacks in the room. You got the 2 younger guys, Fitzgerald, Jimmy Sullivan, but then you got Jackson Stratton, Brendan Sullivan, Hank Brown, and Mark Gronowski, which that's another kind of off topic with Mark is he's out there practicing. He's not throwing the ball, but it shows you how far ahead he actually is. And you're now seeing it with your own eyes because he's literally at practice. He is in pads. He's just not really throwing the ball, and he's way ahead of schedule. It sounds like they're actually hoping that towards the end of the spring, so maybe the open scrimmage when we're there, sounds like they are potentially gonna have him throwing the ball at that point because he's so far ahead of schedule. So that's really good news. So so you have a quarterback room that is much more improved, or at least got a lot more guys in the quarterback room that are competing, that are battling out, and a lot of these guys, besides maybe Brendan Sullivan, are going to stick with the team. I mean, you go back to last year, Deacon Hill leaves right after spring, right? The other 2 stay, but they're not very good. So it's going to be very interesting to see how everything kind of shakes out. Obviously, Mark is our presumed starter going into next year, no doubt about it. It's going to be interesting to see what Brendan Sullivan does because, in my opinion, he's the type of guy that, he's done after this year. So does he want to ride the bench and only play a handful of times? Or is he okay with just kind of being that guy? And I would assume that an entire offseason with Lester, we would maybe incorporate some stuff for him. Obviously last year was all down by the red zone, but maybe this year, maybe we would do a little bit more with him. Probably wouldn't be a lot more. I would still assume that, Mark would probably play 90%, 95% of the snaps, but so it's going to be interesting to see what Brendan does. And people are probably wondering, though, why would he not transfer them before spring? Well, in my opinion, teams get more desperate after spring ball. I mean, think about how desperate we were last year after spring ball. It's like, we need a quarterback. And so for him, he could go through spring, get better with Lester, and then there's going to be a lot of teams out there that are desperate, that like, we need a quarterback. And so, that drives up everything. And so maybe that's what he's waiting for. It's going to be really interesting to see. But I think regardless, if he stays or goes, we still have a quarterback room that I feel good about. You got Hank Brown from Auburn. I still think he's probably a year away, but you at least have him who has some experience. Jackson Stratton, who's played a little bit, right, last year, and then the 2 younger guys. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all that unfolds. I'm really hoping selfishly that when we go to the open scrimmage on April 26th, that Mark is throwing the ball just to kind of see what we kind of have in him a little bit. But I'm going to be really curious to kind of watch the other quarterbacks go. Number 2, what will the running back production be post Caleb Johnson? We talked about this, like 3 episodes ago, where, he definitely masked over some of the problems on the offensive side of the ball last year, and he was just a stud. And it's going to be really hard to replace him. But I think we have a trio of backs that can at least be productive for us. It's not going to be Caleb Johnson productive, but I think they all kind of have different attributes that can help this team. Moulton Patterson and TJ Washington, which I think TJ Washington's going to probably be more of a running back this year. I think last year we were just so desperate at wide receiver that we moved him to wide receiver. But from what I've heard is he's been playing a lot of running back for us now. So you got those 3 guys. Then you got the guys that are a little bit younger than them, Brevin Dahl and Isaiah Williams. So are they ready to take that next step? And then the true freshman who I'm really excited about, Nathan McNeil. He's a guy that really intrigues me as well. Maybe probably won't see him much this next year, but down the road, he definitely has. I mean, he's, for only being a freshman, he's pretty built. So I'm excited for him. So I'm kind of curious to see how all that kind of shakes out, right, with the running back room. Number 3, who's going to step up at wide receiver and be the guy? So we got a lot of guys, and that's a good thing, right? I much rather be in this situation, but I want 1 or 2 guys to just stand out and just be the dudes for us. Who is that going to be? Jacob Gill, really nice player. Is he wide receiver 1 for us, though? Or was he just wide receiver 1 for us last year because we just had no other people, right? And he did really good last year. He was very consistent for us, but is he wide receiver 1 material? I don't know. That's something to watch. Reese Vanderzee, 2nd year in, your hope is that he gets bigger, faster, stronger in just 1 year. Last year at this time, he was still in high school. So really intrigued with him. And then, you got guys like Seth Anderson. Can he stay healthy for once? Sam Phillips, transfer bringing in. Caden Weegan, are we going to incorporate him more? Jerry Bowie, Dane Howard, they're now 3 years into this team. And, the hope is maybe they can take a step up, a leap forward. So it's going to be really interesting to watch that play out because we do got a lot of guys. And that's, like I said, a great problem to have. KJ Parker, another guy that we've been seeing a lot. They've been posting a lot of videos and pictures with him. Is he the guy? Right. All I know is we need eventually, to be a really good football team, you got to have that just go-to playmaker, at least one anyway, but maybe two go-to playmakers on the outside that you can just depend on game in and game out, similar to what we had like 5 years ago with Brandon Smith and Amir Smith-Marset. Yeah. And then the fourth one, this just real quick, is who will start at left tackle. You have competition there with Jack Dotzler and Trevor Locke. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see who kind of comes up there. And I think we'll kind of have a bigger or a better picture post spring who probably will be the left tackle. And then if we hear rumors or rumblings that we're going after a left tackle in the portal, then that means that they, maybe we're not fully confident in both of them. So that's just kind of the fourth piece that I'm going to be keeping an eye on for the offense. Yeah.
I mean, I think you hit on really good points there with the offense. I think just to add on kind of what you were talking about, going back to the QB room, I mean, Collin, you laid out all those players that are gone and now that we have, but how about the coaching staff in the room as well on the offensive side of the ball? You have Brian Ferentz, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach. You have John Budmeyer is like the main offensive analyst, senior analyst, whatever you want to call it. And now we've got Tim Lester, who you saw what he did in 1 year, as well as you added, or you talked about on one of the podcasts, adding Warren Ruggiero, who's a guy from Wake Forest that was a very creative guy in his offense and put up a lot of points at Wake Forest with not the best talent there either. And so those guys coaching Mark Gronowski and Sullivan and Hank Brown, like that is a recipe for success in my mind, right? That's how you develop quarterbacks, not by having a former offensive lineman and Brian Ferentz trying to do it. That's all I'm going to say about that. The last thing that I'll talk about with the offense, and you talk about, not knowing what you have at wide receiver, maybe tight end as well. We saw the news with Gavin Hoffman transferring out just this last week. Does he look at a situation last year where Luke Lachey maybe wasn't involved very much at all? I mean, like we talked about on this podcast how many times where we're like, did Luke Lachey transfer? Is he injured? What's going on with him? But he was on the team. He wasn't utilized very well. Is that something that, are the tight ends becoming less and less important in this offense? I heard, when Tim Lester got here, he loved utilizing tight ends in the RPO offense, but we haven't been able to find that yet. It looks like in year one, or did Gavin Hoffman get beat out? He's just like, hey, I'm out of here. Like guys now, they don't want to sit, right? They want to play. Yeah. This is a former 4-star, talented guy. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I know we talked about wide receiver, but maybe even tight end a little bit too.
Yeah, it's crazy because you look at the Packers, like they utilize their tight ends a lot. Kraft, right? Tucker Kraft, I think his name is.
Yeah.
But the first year with Lester, we didn't utilize tight ends, and maybe that was just that's a good thing to kind of watch, kind of keep an eye on. Was that just a 1 year wonder where we just didn't really utilize the tight ends very often? And will that be something that we're going to go back to more now, like in year two, when we're kind of establishing things in this new offense, or is that just kind of what Tim Lester is wanting to do? Is like we're gonna get our playmakers, we're gonna get the wide receivers more involved, similar to what he did like at Western Michigan, right? Because at Western Michigan, it was mainly wide receivers. Their wide receivers were putting up a lot of yards every single season. They weren't really utilizing the tight ends as much. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all that shakes out. Good points right there. All right, let's switch to the defense side now. 4 storylines for the defense. Number 1, defensive tackle still scares me a little bit because last year, the depth there, it was something that we talked about going into the year, and in my opinion, it was definitely kind of a problem last year. Now we bring back Aaron Graves, stud, but outside of him, can Jeremiah Pittman finally take that next step? Will the light bulb finally turn on for him? Because it feels like it quite hasn't yet. And I think he has a potential, but we just haven't seen it yet. And will it ever? And then we brought in, 2 transfer portal players, Jonah Pace, who was at Central Michigan. He's kind of a older guy, so you would imagine that he can come in and fill that void. But, it's a little bit different, playing the MAC versus the Big Ten. And then you got Bryce Hawthorne, a young guy with a lot of potential. He had a great year as a freshman for South Dakota State. But once again, you're talking playing at South Dakota State, still very young. Will we be able to rely on him? So defense tackle for me is something that I'm still a little worried about. And just going to be kind of interested to see how things shake out there, especially as we go through the spring ball. Number 2, how will we replace Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins? Now, we had this similar problem going into 2023. Probably had a similar topic. How are we going to replace Jack Campbell, Seth Benson, and Justin Jacobs? And it's turned out we had a guy in Jay Higgins that just started and kept grinding and stayed with the course and stayed with the team. And he got his chance and he shined. And then we went out and got Nick Jackson from Virginia. Now we got 2 guys that I'm really high on, 2 guys that are kind of the same type of approach with Jay Higgins that's been in the program for a few years now. And now it's their time to shine. And that is Carson Shaw and Jaden Harrell. My biggest question is, are those guys ready? Are they ready? It would be really nice if we were able to do exactly what we did in 2023, where it felt like we did not lose a step after losing Jack Campbell and Benson and Justin Jacobs. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Number 3, who will start at cash for us? Zach Lutmar, Cohen Entringer. Thought maybe it'd be John Nestor, but he's out now. Zach Lutmar is a type of guy that I think will probably be it. We saw him a lot this last year. Very athletic guy. And I think he's just that typical Phil Parker type player, kind of comes out of nowhere. And I think he has a lot of potential. And he was starting at the cash position the other day when the media was there. So I would assume it will be him, but I guess that is something we will keep an eye on. And then number 4, and this is probably the biggest thing with the defense, is just the secondary in general just needs all around improvement. No question about it. TJ Hall, Deshaun Lee, similar to Jeremiah Pittman. Will the light bulb turn on for them? I think TJ Hall, in my opinion, I'm still holding out hope for him. He has the size to be able to be a corner in the Big Ten. Deshaun Lee, I'm just not sold on him. I'm just not. But they're now, another year. It's like, can they just take that next step? And if they can, that is great news. But if they can't, what about the younger guys? Jalen Watson and Godfrey. Those 2 guys, they were freshmen last year. We're seeing a lot of coverage on them too with pictures and stuff by the Hawkeye media team. And I always kind of take that into consideration when you're seeing a lot of guys when they post on Instagram, Twitter, that might tell you something. And we've been seeing a lot of those 2 guys as well. So in my opinion, if TJ Hall, Deshaun Lee, if they just still kind of the same players that we've kind of always had, very inconsistent, then maybe it's time to just move on and go with these 2 guys. And then with that, though, are we going to pursue another portal player, which I think is honestly necessary? I don't care if you are good with these 4 guys. I still think you need to go out and get a corner with some experience that you can maybe have to rely on if someone gets hurt or, guys aren't just stepping up or whatever. So that's going to be a big thing. And then going to the safeties, the time is now for Xavier Nwampa. It is senior year. Yep. He has so much potential, so much talent. The time is now. Now he's moving over to free safety. That might help, but we really need to see that 5-star talent, because last year, there was a lot of problems sort of with the defense, D-line, secondary, things like that. The safeties weren't that good either. Xavier and Quinn Schulte just were not great. Yeah, Iowa State game.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see that. And then at strong safety, I'm really high on Cohen Entringer. He's going to start regardless, whether he's playing at cash or strong safety. Once again, I think you can kind of incorporate both him or Lutmar. Either Lutmar is going to be strong safety and Cohen will be cash, or vice versa. But just in general, though, the secondary, just we need all around improvement. I want to be able to feel somewhat good walking out of spring, and then post spring, if we can get a transfer portal player where we're feeling really good going into August.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the secondary. But I want to speak a little bit and touch on the defensive line. I think it's an underrated thing going into this year. We, like you mentioned, it was a bit of a problem last year, lack of depth at D tackle.
Yep.
Could we get by? It's a Big Ten, man. It's a grind, and you need depth at D line. Where do you win? It's in the trenches, right? It's offensive and defensive line, and I think the secondary, and rightfully so in a lot of games. You just mentioned it, and I back you on that. They didn't play well, but I think something that people forget is the way that we play defense at Iowa. We really like to rush forward and have 7 drop back in coverage, right?
Yeah,
that's the way Phil would like to play it. But if you're not getting any pressure with 4 guys, and it felt like there was a lot of games where we were not generating enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and they have all day to sit back there. And so the corners and safeties can only hold up for so long. I mean, the offense is built to win in football right now, and it's hard to play defense. So you got to get guys that can rush the passer, especially from the interior, and obviously stop the run. But, last year I think I saw a stat. It was like our defense, the secondary gave up, 60% completion percentage, or maybe a little better, and that's the first time that's happened since 2012. And I do think an underrated part of that is the lack of pressure on the defensive line, and lack of depth at D line. You gotta build that up. Like you said, is that in the transfer portal, or is that a guy like Jeremiah Pittman being able to step up and fill a big need, along with some of those other transfers that we did get, you mentioned as well. So that's gotta improve drastically, and I think that does help our secondary out a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. There was like 2 games in particular last year. Michigan State game for the passing, where it felt like we gave Aiden Childs all the time in the world, and there was no wonder why guys were just open, because
and he ran around and ran around 100 yards rushing. So yeah.
And then the UCLA game, they were the worst team running the football in the Big Ten, and we let them run all over us. And it was mainly our defensive line just played like crap that game. It was really bad. And think about like a game like that, where towards the end of the season in November, and we talk depth at the defensive tackle, especially. True. Guys are playing a lot of snaps, and you got to have guys that can come in and you can rely on. So it's going to be, in my opinion, it's definitely a big, defensive line needs to be better for sure. I really like, some of the guys in there, bringing back, Kirkett and Max Llewellyn. I really love Max Llewellyn. He's so good. Brian Allen, now he's not playing this spring. He had some surgery done after the season, so he won't be back until probably fall camp. But guys like him, and then
feel good about our edges.
Yep, I do too. The edges, I'm not really too worried about. It's more the depth at defense tackle. Now, if you tell me right now, Jeremiah Pittman takes a good step forward, Jonah Pace comes in and fills a void, Bryce Hawthorne is decent, then I'm feeling a little bit better. But until we can say that for certain, then I'm always going to be a little worried. So those are my storylines. Those are stuff, like I said, that I'm going to just kind of keep kind of watching out for as we kind of get towards the end of spring ball and get into kind of that next dead period, which is summer workouts, summer conditioning, and then into fall camp. I do want to mention, I know we talked about Gavin Huffman, sort of talk John Nestor, Max White, all those guys are leaving, which in my opinion, if they're transferring during spring ball or right before spring ball, that tells you all you really need to know at that point. And that's just kind of what I think. But like John Nestor, did he see the writing on the wall that he probably wasn't going to probably start this year? I don't know. Gavin Huffman, same thing. Max White, he was a walk-on. He knew he wasn't going to play. So that one is 100%. Like, I know why. But also at the same time, too, we need to trim our roster down to 105. I was actually going to do an episode at some point going over the roster. Right now we're at like 107, and we need to trim it down to 105. So there's still going to be some guys that are going to have to leave after spring, which I'm sure there will be. And, if we go out and get some portal players, or at least one more portal player, then we're going to need few guys to leave to get down to 105. So, and then, yeah, just going right back before we end this with Mark Kanowski, it is just such good news that he is so far ahead of schedule, because once again, we were a little worried that night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as the days kind of played out, you started realizing, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And it's definitely different than Cade McNamara, 100% different than Cade McNamara. But you're still a little like, it would be nice for him to be out there in spring ball. But he is out there, right? He's still going through the motions. He's still suited up.
He's not wearing like a brace or a cast or anything on his shoulder, shoulder sleeve or anything like that. Like he's not like Cade where he's in a knee brace, right?
Yep, exactly. Definitely was just a cleanup surgery. He even talked about it with Gary Dolphin. I listened to his interview with him. He mentioned didn't really need to have it done, but they just felt like it was the best thing to do and be ready to go.
Yep.
And now he is, from the sounds of it, way ahead of schedule. Exciting times ahead. I don't know where we will go with the podcast here in the next few weeks. We'll definitely have one out after that open scrimmage. If we start landing some more players, which I know we will, but depending on who we land, maybe we'll do an instant reaction on that once we kind of have everything kind of figured out with the roster for men's basketball. The coaching staff, obviously we got, 2 guys. We got Josh Sash and then Bryson Williams, but we still need, I think, 3 more coaches that are going to have to be announced and some supporting staff there. So we'll just kind of wait to see how everything unfolds, and we'll just kind of go from there for the next few weeks. That will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening, and go Hawks.